Welcome to Eureka. I am Gauhar Raza and you are watching Eureka. Before I introduce the guest of the day, let me tell you a story. There was a small town called Lalpur. There was a family there. The father was educationist, a physicist and a mathematician. And the mother was social worker. 3 children, one of them very bright, started his education in that small town, moved to Lahore, then moved to Delhi, then went to Bombay, did his PhD, but he was not satisfied. He did another PhD when he went abroad. Yeah, normally people go to a foreign country and get lost in that land of sugar and honey. But this boy came back to India, became a scientist. There is a story related to how he became a scientist within the country. Joined one of the most prestigious organizations called Central Drug Research Institute. He contributed not only to science, but the science policy of the country. He is truly a nation builder because he not only did excellent science, he also built the industry in the country. Dr. Nitya Anand, welcome to Eureka.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
Very humble after what you have said, but I've enjoyed my life in this country, and every day has been a very enjoyable day since I joined at Lucknow in 1951.
Let me take you back to your childhood. Did you ever visit Lalpur after coming back from there?
Not really. I did get an opportunity a few times, but I was very busy in my work in Lucknow. I couldn't leave, but I would have very much liked to go back. The memories always come, and they are very rich memories of my stay at Lalpur, where all my thinking started when I was a very small child.
Lalpur doesn't exist. It has become Faisalabad.
Yes.
So, do you feel uneasy about it? The name has been changed?
Definitely, I do.
You do.
But on the other hand, the Faisalabad name also brings back other memories of how the other countries are becoming a part of the memory of the institution which were created in this country. As you know, Faisalabad name came from King Faisal, who visited Pakistan.
Right.
And Pakistan decided to honor him by giving the best of the institutes of Punjab his name.
Partition was a major discontinuity in our civilization. And this was a discontinuity also in your life. Would you recollect the memories of how you went back to Faisalabad to rescue your family, brought them to India? How did you manage that? Your father was retired at that time.
My father had just retired, but my father had decided to stay because the retired government servants, particularly teachers, were given an option to decide whether they would like to stay back in Pakistan or come back to India, or come to India.
Come to India, yeah.
And he was deeply involved in social work, as my father
As your mother was also involved in social work.
So he decided to stay back in Pakistan because there will be lots of people who need his help, the Hindu families or even other Muslim families who need his help. He was doing work for them all the time. So he decided that they will stay back in Lalpur. But the condition became difficult for people to stay back, although Lalpur, luckily, till the end of August 47, was still pretty quiet and pretty well managed. But then the conditions started getting worse, so we had to decide.
You were in panic?
I was in panic. I was in Bombay. I was knowing more about what was happening around than they in Pakistan were knowing. So I decided that we must bring them out now. And coming through other channels was very difficult. Luckily, I had a very close friend who was working with Tata Airlines. His family was also in Lalpur. So I decided to take a plane, and I flew to Lalpur and brought them out.
You were very lucky, your family was very lucky. Most of the people who migrated from there or who migrated from India to Pakistan were not so lucky. But did it create a disturbance in your mind, and how did you continue doing very good science and you were very good in
I'll tell you,
education?
because the very feeling
Must have been a very hard time for you.
it was a hard time, but on the other hand, it was also an inspiring time, in the sense that India was becoming independent after so many years of struggle, and after so many years of people to be put together to work for the freedom of the country. We could still get the freedom of the country. So that really overlooked everything else. And although it was difficult to leave a house where we had stayed for 50 years, in 2 hours' time, we had to lock everything and just leave it there. And what happened, I don't know. But on the other hand, I still remember when the plane crossed the Wagah border, my father and mother heard the pilot say that we have crossed into India border. They didn't think of what they had left behind, but oh, now we are in independent India. That is a kind of great feeling which all three of us had. All that doesn't matter now what we left behind, we are all three together. That's a kind of great feeling in an independent India. That's the kind of feeling that was there. And
Why did you decide to go to Cambridge and do another PhD?
Because
You could have got the best of the job with one PhD.
That is true, but on the other hand, we wanted to look at the recent developments in biological sciences. I was somehow very much interested in biological sciences right from the beginning. And Professor Todd, who became a Nobel laureate later and also became a Lord Todd, was one of the upcoming scientists in the field of biology, in the field of chemical biology, or call it
Which was a
nucleic
new
acid.
subject at
New
that
subject.
time.
And that, I
emerging.
think, I was very lucky that we could get that field of biology at that time in 1948, 49, at that time to get that field. And that really prepared me very well for what I was going to work on, drug discovery research later.
Were you already dreaming that you will be shaping the country? You will be such a big scientist and you will be...
Absolutely not. My only interest was to work and to get a humble beginning and to continue with that and enjoy my work and enjoy my life and do something by which I can contribute to society. Right from very early age, even when I was a child, we had a village very near where we were staying. The village children used to come to me for their first aid, for other things, for education in the evening. So from that time onwards, I was very much interested.
You were already building the society. You were already into
I was enjoying it.
Shaping
I'm not saying I was
mind.
shaping society, but I was enjoying it, enjoying with the children. So from that time, my mind was built up on one thing. I'll do something which will good something
for the
society.
We'll come back to the questions. I have to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Eureka. We are discussing with Dr. Nitya Anand how he started dreaming of shaping the country or shaping his own area of expertise. When you came back to India, CDRI was a very nascent stage. It was just beginning as an institute. How did you visualize that CDRI will become one of the most important institutes in the country which will contribute in the future? Were you certain that it will happen?
No, it wasn't certain. Nothing was certain at that time. The country was just starting, really.
It was opening its size, it was rising.
The only thing that I had always kept pace with or kept myself interested in the national developments in different ways. And I had already been involved in some way, in little ways, with the pharmaceutical industry and the role of the pharmaceutical industry in the country. Now, 1947, when India became independent, we did realize the importance of what the pharmaceutical industry in the country has to do for healthcare. And when I read a little bit more about it during even that period, realized that the country realized, the National Congress at that time realized that the country has to play a major role in laying down the policy of the country for national development, for industrial development.
And you were aware that this leadership, political leadership of the time, which was tempered in the tradition of freedom struggle, would like to build country which has large scientific base and self-reliance. Were you aware of those reports that had been prepared much before India got free?
That is true, because we used to keep in touch with all the National Congress was one of the few parties, I would say, in the country which is already talking about, because of Nehru's leadership from 1933 onwards, was talking about using science and technology for the bringing about the industrial change, for bringing about the change in the whole attitude of the country's development. So they have already been planning for the change that the country could be brought about by having a proper science and technology utilization for industrial development. So this we are already aware. And as these things started...
Would you also say that this is what is remarkable about Indian freedom movement?
Absolutely.
That this did not happen in other countries,
Absolutely.
but it did happen in India, that our political leadership was extremely conscious of the fact
Absolutely.
that without science and technology, country cannot develop.
Because as I can say again, going back, because some of these I may have read as I came back to the country and started working on it, that our National Congress planning group had got 30 reports ready by 1938, 1939 for the industrial development or for the development of the country.
Both scientific and technological.
Yes, on one side it was science and technology and industrial development. On the other side also it was social development. And social development, for example, on women's empowerment, on the empowerment of children's education, on the empowerment of other ways in which the cultural development of the country could take place.
Which is again remarkable, because France still did not have universal suffrage. It did not give voting rights to the women. And our leadership was at that time thinking of equality of gender.
Absolutely. The report of the National Congress of 1939 on women's empowerment is remarkable. At that time to have a report on. So all these reports were ready when India became independent. So all these were easily put into a way in which they will help in the industrial, scientific and social development of the country, and science and technology had to be fully utilized.
And was that, you were also rooted completely rooted in freedom movement and the values that were passed on as a scientist, you implemented those values as far as CDRI is concerned, and your colleagues
I can say
along with
another
you.
Small little incident which happened in my life.
Right.
When I started working at Cambridge, I realized that how important it is to take up certain specific areas of healthcare. And somehow leprosy and tuberculosis, which were affecting India, became a special consideration for me, even when I was at Cambridge.
Right.
I realized at that time I used to read quite a bit about philosophical development, and I was reading about Schweitzer. Schweitzer had settled in Lemberine in Africa, trying with a leprosy home, and he was helping the cases of leprosy in Africa. Now that came to my mind, why shouldn't I go and join him and work with him? When I wrote to him, he said, I'll welcome you here, but my advice is that you are well prepared to do drug research. And we are well advised, why don't you go back to your own country, do drug research. Many people can do social work, but not many people can do drug discovery research, which you can do. And his idea of working on leprosy came to my mind at that time, even when I had not even joined CDRI yet. And when I joined CDRI, it was a wonderful opportunity. My first work in CDRI was on development of new drugs for leprosy.
So you moved on from leprosy to many other areas and developed whatever was needed in the country. But the most remarkable thing was that CDRI was able to refuse certain grants which had tied strings.
Rather, I would say certain tie-ups. Yes.
Yeah.
So that is true, because we had decided, right?
Why did you decide that? Because everybody would like to do international research instead of doing something which is local.
International research for scientific ideas is all right. But in each social setting, one has to be committed to that social setting. And Indians have to be committed to India's social setting. It's not taking you away from the world, global environment. But what if India doesn't do it, who else would do it? And therefore, our emphasis at CDRI right from the beginning was, how can we emphasize, although I was very small at that time, but that's the kind of thinking that I could get, we should start our work with those diseases which are of greater importance for the country. Here I might also say one thing more, that the commitment at that time in the country was that we had also to develop the drug production in the country and how to be developed. And the industry at that time had hardly a total production in the country in 47 of 100 crores. 100 crores with a population even at that time of 60, 70 crores, how much could it give?
One of the biggest, largest
decided, So we had decided at that time, the country, national leadership had decided that they will encourage industry to set up process development and become self-sufficient and self-reliant by developing new processes for the drugs that are known today. So the industry would be asked to concentrate on
process development. Taking a decision to go in for process development was a remarkable departure at that time, which has affected the country till today.
But somebody had to do some drug discovery research also, and CDRI was given the main objective of doing.
CDRI was lured a number of times by multinationals. How did you resist that?
I was going to say that. Yeah. So drug discovery research.
Right.
Once having that, we had to work on those areas where our country needs drugs most. And we decided that our infectious diseases is an area which is of very great importance for the country. So we'll work on infectious diseases. In those 2 or 3 diseases which are of very great importance were the mycobacterial infection, including leprosy. We started working on leprosy. And similarly, by 1960, we had also started working on contraception, where even WHO wanted to work on it.
Which was a great problem for the country.
Absolutely. And we have one of the major contraceptive developed in the country. At that time, once we started developing well, the multinational companies, their representatives started coming to India. They used to go around the world trying to collect compounds and trying to lure people to come and work with them. But their emphasis was that we should work on their disease conditions.
Which you refused, CDI refused.
CDI refused. Once we work on what
they were ready to give you huge amount of money.
They were going to call it huge. Those days, $50,000, $100,000 was a big sum of money.
Very big.
But they wanted to give the money for us to work on their problems. But we said no. We shall work on our problem. And the only laboratory which was prepared to give us money, give us support for any work that we are doing, provided we give them compounds for screening, but they allowed us to work on what we were doing. That was Eureka Laboratories from California.
And you refused to cooperate and seek cooperation from other companies,
from any other company
which were not ready to give you. I have to take a break at the moment. Don't go anywhere. The discussion is becoming more and more interesting. So we'll come back soon. Welcome back to Eureka. We are discussing with Dr. Nitya Anand how India and CDRI resisted intrusion of multinationals which wanted us to do secondary kind of
which wanted to become their problems to be worked on India.
Right.
So we wanted to stick to our problems, which are great important. Our problems were at that time malaria, filaria, leishmaniasis, tuberculosis, leprosy, and some other infectious diseases on which the West was gradually losing their interest, but we were winning.
Because those diseases did not exist there.
Did not exist by 60s, did not exist there anymore.
Yeah.
But on the other hand...
And those diseases also did not pay a lot of money to...
On the other hand, second part I was going to say, if you find something for diabetes, it's for the whole life. But if you find something for malaria or for any other infectious disease, it's only 4 days, 5 days, a week or 2 weeks. Right. So the time or the period for which you use the drug is very short. So the total financial benefit to the industry is not that large. But yet the country needs them most. And they were interested in us to take up their disease areas rather than also agree to our working on what our national problem was. And that's the kind of dilemma that we faced. But we luckily faced this dilemma and stuck to our own decision that we shall work on what is important for us and which is important for the country, what's important for our own motherland.
It is because of CDRI, many people say that today our pharmaceutical companies are strong and strong enough to compete in international market. Especially recently in Africa, we went with a lot of Indian drugs, which was resisted by international drug mafia, I'll call it. How has CDRI over a period of time fulfilled your dream?
No, I think I'll slightly change the way that you presented, that the responsibility of developing the generic drug industry really belongs to the pharmaceutical industry itself. The government policy was very clear. The government policy right from 1948, the Industrial Policy Resolution, had really clearly laid down that they will support the industry in every way if industry develops indigenous technology,
Right.
indigenous capability, and develops processes and makes India self-sufficient. One major thing that was needed was that kept on coming was the patent law. Whenever India industry wanted to make something, the patent law would be brought in. In India, we had inherited the 1911 patent law, which gave permission only for product patents,
Right.
not for process patents. And unless the product can be made by different processes, we couldn't make them. So the Indian government had the courage to change the patent law from product patent to process patent in 1970, which brought about the really major change in the whole landscape of the industry. And the Indian industry rose to the occasion, and the patent law was changed in 1970. By 1983-84, India had become totally self-sufficient in the production of not only our own drugs, but also major exports started taking place, and we became a big exporter.
You were a first-rate scientist of the country. You devoted most of your life in doing science. But you also had to think about so many things like science policy, shaping the science policy. You were part of all the committees that one could think of as far as drug industry is concerned. You were in all the committees of the government. How did you do that? It's almost a magic for me.
No, I think if you are dedicated, my joy was the involvement for the industry, involvement for health care of the people. And health care of the people needed you both to make new drugs and also to make the drugs that are made also available for them, unless they can get the drugs which are needed by them. And I must say that Indian pharmaceutical industry as such, the industrial company, they greatly collaborated with them. And the three of the major laboratories which CSR had, which helped in developing new technologies for the industry, so was also there. It was National Chemical Laboratory, it was Indian Institute of Chemical Technology, Hyderabad, and CDRI. So in addition to developing new drugs, we also develop new technologies.
You wrote about 400 papers, which is a lot. On the one hand, you were doing this research, which could result into 400 pages, which are 400 papers, which are extremely important papers for the posterity to come. But on the other hand, you were also committed to scientific temper. How did you divide the time?
No, scientific temper doesn't need any time.
You were popularizing science, you wanted to go to even schools, and you...
But scientific temper really needs is your own scientific thinking. After you need to know about what science means. Science means relationship between the universe and you. Between all that you do all the time, everything that happens, you get into a feeling that all the time that you think of what happens in the universe, how does it happen, It's a scientific method by which it happens. The scientific method and scientific temper are what give you a total picture of the universe around you. Anything that you do ultimately is a science.
So it wasn't very difficult for you
Absolutely
because you
no
lived
different.
that life.
You live.
You lived
So
scientific
I
method
always say that
and you could
you
communicate.
live with science, and all that you do is that you live with science. And science has two or three major tenets. One is its cause and effect relationship.
Right from the Young Scientist Award of CSIR, then INSA, then you got every award in the country, including the highest award, civilian awards. Which award did give a real happiness to you? This was a recognition of your work.
No, I think with all the awards together brought me home more humility and more desire to do something for the society and more desire to be of help to the society where I can play my major part.
It has been really a pleasure to have you here. Would you like to say something to the younger generation of the country?
I can say that I think one thing I would say that science is more than a profession or a particular occupation. Science gives you a great deal of delight to know all that is happening around you. And as I said, cause and effect relationship is something which science teaches you. All the time, everything that you do, you live with science and have with the scientific temper.
Pleasure to have you on the
Thank
show.
you so much. Thank you so much.
We'll be back next week with another outstanding scientist. Keep watching Eureka.